on Prime Crime.
If you had killed Susan, would you tell me?
No.
Our continuing story of Robert Durst.
How do you know Kathy's buried at all?
Seemed like a logical step.
From his unforgettable testimony to an ending you may not see coming.
That is absolutely ridiculous. I don't understand it at all. That rule should be revised.
Hey there, everybody. I'm Jesse Weber, and welcome to Prime Crime. This is where we do a deeper dive into the most high-profile and memorable true crime cases. This is part 2 and the conclusion to the Robert Durst saga.
Previously on Prime Crime.
This is a gunshot wound to her head. That means the killer had to be near her.
Susan would not allow a stranger into her home.
We would spend a lot of time together. We could talk. We had the thing in common.
Susan Berman was killed in December of 2000. 2 months earlier, the Westchester District Attorney's Office was reopening the investigation into Kathy Durst's disappearance. That spooked Robert Durst.
You know about the call to the dean, right? I don't think Kathy called.
The movie and Andrew was under the opinion it was Susan Berman.
Susan Berman was killed because she was a witness and had evidence against Robert Durst for the killing of his own wife.
Susan told me that she'd been contacted by Los Angeles detectives and New York detectives.
And who you sent it to?
Susan Berman, 1527 Benedict Canyon, Beverly Hills, California. Beverly spelled wrong.
So obviously I want to ask you about the cadaver note.
Same misspelling.
Did you write the cadaver note?
No, I didn't write the cadaver note.
I was the worst fugitive the world has ever met.
He moved to Galveston, Texas.
Morris, get out of here. He takes the gun out. I grab him and the gun, and we fall down in the kitchen. The gun goes off and shoots him in the side of the face. I'm going to have to dismember his body.
He told Morris Black about Janine Pirro's investigation. That became a huge piece of evidence of Robert Durst's motive for killing Morris Black.
I think some of the jurors were swayed by his celebrity and his wealth.
What made you do the movie?
Still sort of putting that together in my own mind.
Kill them all, of course.
On the eve of the episode of the Jinx airing, he was arrested.
I do cold murder cases, complex circumstantial murder cases.
This is really the case that never ends. Hopefully it won't end until justice is achieved.
When Robert Durst is arrested in 2015 down in Louisiana, he doesn't realize he's about to meet a new adversary.
Starting in 2013, the District Attorney's Office in Los Angeles reopened its investigation into the killing of Susan Berman. A prosecutor in LA who specializes in cold cases named John Lewin was assigned the case.
I feel like I know you even though I've never met you.
I believe Lewin's strategy going into that interview was to let Robert Durst know that John Lewin was the world's leading expert on Robert Durst's favorite subject, which was, of course, Robert Durst.
Your brother Doug is not your favorite person. Was that a fair statement?
That's fair.
Then they ask you the same question. Do you remember what you answered?
Yeah, I said he's
It is still my favorite thing that I've heard you say.
Durst treated the interview like it was a game.
If you had killed Kathy, would you tell me?
No.
If you had killed Susan, would you tell me?
No.
There were so many moments where he just seemed to be skirting the things he knew would incriminate him.
When you killed Susan, that was not something you wanted to do.
I'm going to stay away from killing Susan.
If Durst didn't kill either Susan or Kathy, what was this exchange about?
If I tell you what I know
Okay.
that answers your questions. What can you possibly do for me?
Okay. Let me.
He wanted something from Lewin, a non-prosecution agreement for giving some information.
At this point in your life, would you have an interest in saying what happened and telling her family?
If there was something I could do for her family,
Okay.
and it would get me, then it would be worthwhile for me.
John Lewin did not give that deal, but he did get the admission that indeed, hey, I may be able to give you something.
In this case, we have a very determined, experienced, and hardworking prosecutor. We have our work cut out for us.
Coming up, the unpredictable and bizarre trial of Robert Durst.
That's a lie. That's not a lie. It's a lie. Could you push out?
Hi, this is Dan Abrams with exciting news for all of our Law and Crime followers on YouTube. You can now get the live Law and Crime Network with YouTube TV for all of your daily live trial coverage, legal news, expert analysis, and original true crime programs. Subscribe to YouTube TV today and then locate Law and Crime in the channel guide. And for only $1.99 a month, you can add the network to your bundle. Watch Law and Crime every day with YouTube TV. We put you in the jury box.
If I go ahead and fight with you, and let's say I win,
You're not going to win.
After 20 years, Robert Durst finally found himself on trial for the murder of his friend Susan Berman. This trial was unlike any other. Not only was there a 14-month delay that interrupted the proceedings due to the COVID-19 pandemic, but the prosecution was permitted to introduce evidence about 2 other deaths to connect Durst to Berman's murder, that of his missing wife, Kathy McCormick Durst, and his former neighbor, Morris Black.
He killed Kathy Durst. Then he killed her, and then he got rid of her body. We will show that when the reinvestigation happened, and when Susan Berman told him that, you know what, I'm going to talk to investigators, that she sealed her fate. The evidence is going to show that he murdered his friend Morris Black, dismembered his corpse. And he did that because, again, Morris Black was a connection to Kathy.
When it came to Durst's defense, he did something shocking, admitting what he had denied for years.
You agree you did not just find Susan's body and somebody else killed her?
I did not find Susan's body.
Bob Durst did not kill Susan Berman, and he doesn't know who did. He did find her body shortly after someone had shot her in the back of the head.
To begin with, you didn't write the cadaver note, is that what
I didn't write the cadaver note.
Whoever wrote that note had to be involved in Susan's death.
He panicked. He wrote the anonymous letter so her body would be found, and he ran.
He decided he was going to tell his story. He was very good at telling his story a lot of times and getting away with it. And his story was, I just happened to come upon my friend Susan Berman, and therefore I wrote a cadaver note and sent it to the police.
The defense also argued away Durst's infamous bathroom confession on the Jinx.
Killed more, of course.
Bob Durst is an easy target. It wasn't a confession at all. The producers of the Jinx had come along and spent maybe 100 hours interviewing Bob and then splicing and editing that together to make him look evil.
At trial, there were many notable moments, like when defense attorneys reenacted the Morris Black shooting.
Mr. Lewin, why don't you describe it? I can't see it.
So we've got Mr. Guerin playing Mr. Black.
Or the tense call between one of Durst's friends and prosecutor Lewin.
We believe you've got information.
You're getting me upset because you weren't the person I spoke to before. A much better manner than you do.
And then there was the testimony of Durst's friend Nick Chavin, who claimed that Durst made this chilling admission.
I said, you wanted to talk about Susan, and Bob said, I had to. It was her or me, I had no choice.
Yet there was one part that we all waited to see when at 78 years old and suffering from numerous health ailments, the accused murderer, Robert Durst, took the stand.
Did you kill Susan Berman?
No,
Do you know who did?
no, I do not.
I had the opportunity to interview two of the jurors. It's interesting, they slightly differ in their impressions of Durst on the stand.
He would talk about things in such, detail where, gosh, how could anyone go into that much detail unless it was the truth? If this is the same testimony that he gave to the Texas jury, I could understand how they would find him credible.
Did you actually see her get on the train?
She was standing on the platform with half a dozen people. The train pulled into the platform. The doors opened. Now, did I actually see Kathy walk through the doors onto the train? And the answer is I don't know.
Maybe he might be, telling the truth in some of these things. And just like, that documentary was called The Jinx, he is the victim of the worst luck anyone has ever experienced.
I shouted Susan a couple of times. Her eyes were closed. I put my hand over her face, and it felt cold. If somebody had done this to Susan, maybe he was still here.
He was giving answers that he had already practiced giving. It just looked very rehearsed, like a performance.
My voice is very recognizable, so I decided that instead of calling 911, I would send the police a letter.
There's something to keep in mind about Durst testifying in front of juries.
You certainly have said to me that you did lie to the jury in Galveston in some way, that your lawyer encouraged you to. I don't think that's...
He didn't encourage me to. We went over the oath. In terms of the whole truth, if you want to leave out something which makes you look bad, well, try it.
Up next, the incredible cross-examination.
How is anybody supposed to figure out when you are telling the truth and when you're lying?
They would have to use their life experiences.
For the whole long weekend when I did the interviews for the Jinx, I was on meth.
Okay, I'm a straight shooter. What you just told me is
In 2021, the world watched in awe as a frail and sickly Robert Durst took the stand in his trial for the murder of his friend Susan Berman, a crime that occurred 2 decades earlier. Durst claimed he found Berman dead in her home and then panicked and ran away.
Did you have any motive to kill Susan Berman?
No.
Was Susan blackmailing you?
No.
While the prosecution argued Durst killed Berman because she was a witness to the alleged murder of Durst's wife, Kathy McCormick Durst, the real estate heir denied having any knowledge about what happened to his missing spouse, and he even suggested she was a drug addict who got into trouble. He also was adamant that he shot his friend Morris Black in self-defense, which a Texas jury agreed with as they acquitted him of murder in 2003. But then, it was the state's turn to question Durst, and there was only one man for that job.
How many instances of perjury do you think you have committed during your testimony in this trial?
I've lied about several times.
Prosecutor John Lewin just filleted him. I've never seen anything like it.
I believe the killer was either still in the house or in the yard.
Mr. Durst, haven't you testified that Susan's body was cold?
I did not testify that Susan's body was cold.
Do you have it ready to go or not?
Play it.
See if I could feel breath, and it felt cold.
Well, what do you have to say about that?
Her face felt cold.
She's dead. How can her breath be cold when she's dead? She's a stiff.
I could have watched Robert Durst on the stand in the Susan Berman trial with John Lewin probably forever. It was the most amazing cat and mouse game.
I think I need to congratulate you. You have just broken your personal record. You have filled up 18 lines on my tablet.
And I want to congratulate you. You set the perjury record.
I had a full, clear view of the side of his face. He would give like a little, sort of like a playful smirk to John, as if he was challenging him.
I never said I knew where Kathy was buried.
Stop. Why did you say you never said you knew where Kathy was buried? How do you know Kathy's buried at all?
Seemed like a logical step. I brought up that my wife was in this program at Lenox Hill Hospital that was supposed to help her get off of cocaine.
Mr. Durst, look what's number one. The program she wants to go to is Lenox Hill Hospital.
Oh, she was already there.
Yes, as a drug addict patient? I guess the interview would have gone something like this. Well, doctor, why do you want to join our program? I've been very impressed. Oh, have you worked here, Dr. Durst? No, actually, I'm a patient. I'm in your drug rehab down the hall. Gosh, I hope that's not going to affect my chances, will it?
After 15 days of testimony, Robert Durst finally left the witness stand. When we return, the controversial finale to the Durst saga.
Think all court shows are the same?
We're talking about your father. Guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
Think again. Judge Caprio rules with common sense.
I was having contractions. I was rushing to the hospital.
Inspector Quinn, what does justice demand? Jail?
And compassion.
I'm going to take the circumstances into consideration.
The best court experience I've had.
Clearly, Judge, he's been in a court before.
Get caught in Providence.
Hi, I'm Dan Abrams. In the exploding legal and true crime genre, Law and Crime is the only network that has it all.
Good evening and welcome.
This is a complicated case.
Don't really jump to conclusions.
Welcome to Prime Crime Tonight. Another day of drama between both sides.
From multiple live trials daily to original and compelling programming, the Law and Crime Network is everywhere, and we invite you inside the jury box. This is Law and Crime.
Did you kill Susan Berman?
No.
But if you had, you would lie about it, correct?
Correct.
September 17th, 2021. That's the date that a verdict was reached in Robert Durst's Los Angeles trial for the 2000 murder of his friend Susan Berman. Prosecutors argue Durst killed Berman to cover up the alleged murder of his missing wife Kathy McCormick Durst in New York. After over 2 decades, with all the conversations, the interviews, a movie, a documentary, and an interrogation, we would finally get an answer as to whether Robert Durst was in fact the killer.
We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant, Robert Durst, guilty of the crime of first-degree murder of Susan Berman.
The fact that he admitted to being, in that house and, discovering her body, and the fact that, he was probably there within, minutes or even at the same time as, the real killer was, that has no credibility for me or for the rest of the jury at all. If here's a person who has, inadvertently, confessed his explanation where it was somebody else, it's unbelievable.
We further find the allegation that in the commission of the above offense, that Susan Berman was a witness to a crime.
At the end of this discussion about Kathy's murder, we did not believe that she was a drug addict who went missing or ran away. We felt that the evidence demonstrating domestic abuse and murder was overwhelming, and this led to a unanimous guilty vote. And this supported the special circumstance.
Susan Berman was an extraordinary human being.
Killing her was a terrible loss to our community. It's the judgment and sentence of this court, Mr. Durst, that you be imprisoned in the state prison for the term prescribed by law, that is, life in prison, without the possibility of parole.
While Durst learned his fate in California, there was an unexpected development in New York.
That conviction had significant implications for our office's ability to bring charges.
After almost 40 years, Robert Durst was finally charged with second-degree murder of Kathleen McCormick Durst. However, the prospect of justice for Kathy would be short-lived.
But we have unbelievable news. Robert Durst, who was convicted of killing multiple people, charged with multiple people, he has died.
When I found out that Robert Durst died, my immediate thought was that Robert Durst willed himself to live as long as he did. He wanted to be the center of attention at his trial. With that complete, I think he was done. The greatest sadness that I felt at the news of Robert Durst's death was that we would never learn what happened to Kathy Durst's body.
Yet there's an important legal implication here. Not only will Durst never stand trial for the murder of Kathy, but in California, since Durst died during the appeals process, his murder conviction was dropped.
That is absolutely ridiculous. I don't understand it at all. That rule should be revised. All this effort and energy and resources went into establishing this. Why can it be overturned and nullified so easily? I do take comfort in knowing that there was, great satisfaction in giving that guilty verdict, because it was a long time coming, especially after he was acquitted in Texas. Most people are not going to be looking at this little detail that it was overturned. I think the message is that he was finally found guilty, and that's what's going to stick in people's minds.
After all said and done, Robert Durst's worst enemy was Robert Durst. His interviews and testimony, it all helped show who he really was and what he did. I think the best place to end is actually with a statement from Robert Durst's brother Douglas after Robert's death. This is where he said, quote, "Bob lived a sad, painful, and tragic life. We hope his death brings some closure to those he hurt." That's all we have for you here on Prime Crime. Leave us your comments on Instagram and Twitter with the hashtag PrimeCrime. As always, thank you for joining us. And until next time, be safe.